Channel 32, Bill Creed from Temple City Star, Alex from our administration, and we welcome you here to our CCW meeting. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping responsibilities. Let's make sure our cell phones are shut off. And if you noticed that our heroes are going to be invading the high school gym, either on Saturday or Sunday. And there are pretty bare walls up here in the
Over 1 heroes are over there right now.
Okay.
We've had lots and lots of school kids come through the last couple of days, and lots more tomorrow.
Yes. So I'll ask Councillor Barnes if he'll open this one prayer.
Here.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this opportunity we have to serve our community as town council members. We're grateful for this opportunity and pray that Thou bless us as we discuss the items that are important for us here on our agenda and guide us in our discussion, and we might be able to come to a consensus of what would be beneficial to our community. We're grateful for this opportunity once again to serve. We're mindful of the Remembrance Day service coming up on Sunday, and we're so thankful for our freedoms, for all the brave souls who fought so hard that we might maintain the freedoms that we have in our country, and we pray that we in our community will do our part to maintain those freedoms, and that Thou bless our federal and provincial leaders, that they may too see the importance of maintaining our freedoms. And we ask Thy blessing to be with us all now. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. We'll call this meeting to order. And you've had in your packets your agenda. Is there any additions
Yeah, give them just
to the agenda?
Here. It'll just take 1 second.
Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Mayor Kronen. All in favor? Gerry. Okay, we're going to be hosted with a delegation. Mr. Alex Scow is going to do a solar presentation on us. This comes out of a discussion that we had a few meetings back. If you remember, we asked administration to look at what it would be like to also charge other buildings in town with solar, and we also asked him, our administrator Jeff, how the solar panels was working out. So Alex is going to probably cover that. So Alex, we'll turn the time over to you.
Just getting the projector warm here. I'll turn this middle light off, Alex. You go ahead again. So, okay. So, I'm going to do a little review of how our 2 projects have done over the last year, and then we can draw on some numbers from there, and then I will share with you a little presentation that was given to me by Jason Atkinson, who was one of the main people with NMAX that we dealt with in getting those projects finished on the ice arena and the Civic Center. So, our current ones are, as mentioned, the Civic Center, and it is 49.1 kilowatt hours of DC is what its rating would be, and then the ice arena at 146. So in total, that's about around 500 panels. Okay. Do you want him right?
No, I'm just saying there's no for the...
Oh, he picks it up there.
Oh, okay. He's good. Sorry.
Nope.
No worries. So these are our main projects that we've done thus far, and we are now at a year review for each of them. For those of you that would want to know, we have had the equivalent of 324 trees get planted by having them in installation for a year, and we have generated over 247 megawatt hours of electricity. So now you know those numbers. Here's a chart that Jeff had shared with you previously.
Now, when he had shared it, I think it was maybe a month or two ago, it didn't have a complete year's worth of data at that time. So I have since updated all of the data on this graph. So now you can see how the energy costs changed from 2016, which is those left 4 columns, to 2017, which is the right 4 columns. On the Civic Center, you'll notice that we did pay a little bit for our energy costs, and that was because an inverter was down for a period of time. And the ice rink has more than compensated for that. You'll see that in the 2 years, you'll see that in the year of 2016, we spent $19,647 on electricity, and that was in energy only, because there's transmission and distribution, but our solar panels won't affect that for any of the sites. So our savings only come out of the energy. So the cost savings of the electricity for the 2 buildings, Civic Center and Ice Arena, ended up being $19,674. The numbers look too close to comfort for me, but that ends up being a net revenue of $27. So what that means is these savings illustrate that the 2 solar projects are operating at net zero. Not zero, net zero. Yeah, that was a weak joke. I told Jeff before coming up here, I don't make jokes in presentations. I'm not funny that way.
And I agreed.
Yes. It's a joke. Anyways, now...
Is that accounting humor, or what is that?
Yeah, probably is, yeah. I'm not funny that way. So, with that year's worth of data that we have and being able to project it forward in the future, I've come up with a little payback schedule that should give us an idea as to when the panels should be paid off. So this schedule accounts for a 1% degradation loss on the panels. So each year the panels won't produce 100% of the electricity they could in year 1. They'll go down by 1% yearly for a period of their life until they go to 0. Now, this schedule accounts for that, as you'll see on the production loss column on the right. And it also accounts for the costs of borrowing. So there's interest that's going to get attached to all of those numbers ongoing. And so I've included those numbers to find our payback as well, so that it's not just the main principal cost, but it includes the interest. The schedule does not account for the future changes to the cost of electricity, because I don't know what they will be. If I did, they would be on there, but in the meantime, it's my assumption that they will go up or be somewhere where they are currently, and so that should only increase the payback time so that it's paid back sooner.
Decrease the payback time.
Decrease the payback time. Yeah, excuse me. So with our current situation on these solar panels, our payback period should be 17 and a half years, roughly. Now, there's a few little things that could be off there and could skew it more so closer to 17 years, and that's that our inverter was down at the Civic Center for a small period of time, so that could increase that. I can't figure that out just yet.
But the panels are good for 30 years.
Yeah,
Guaranteed to.
They're guaranteed production for 30 years. And then we have a 15-year agreement with NMAX that states that if anything happens to the panels or the inverters, they will come and they will fix them at their own cost, and everything will be maintained that way. So it's a 15-year warranty on everything. And so that gets us awfully close to our payback period, and then everything else on top of that is a bonus.
Alex, these figures you're throwing out here,
Yep.
do we have to report that to the energy regulator?
I don't believe so, no?
No.
Good. So again, this is just our savings on electricity. So normally we'd spend $20,000 a year on electricity. Our solar panels are producing $20,000 worth of electricity, saving us that $20,000 we would normally spend. There's one thing that's been noted with the Alberta Municipal Solar Program, and that's that their rebate has increased from 25% up to 30%. So you'll remember that a portion of our, or 25% of our funding for the solar panels was covered by the Alberta government, and so that percentage has increased to 30%. If it was our first time doing it, I think there's an even bigger bonus, but we've already done these 2 projects, so that's irrelevant for us at this point. So that's our fairly quick year review on those two projects, and now I will switch us over to the NMAX proposal that was given to us by Jason Atkinson. So I guess the discussion was to have us look into doing more solar for more buildings in town. And so I had Jason do up a solar farm presentation or proposal for us that would cover all of the town's buildings that are owned by the town. So like the swimming pool, the wastewater treatment plant, the different pump stations. And originally, well, going back in time, you couldn't offset the load of a building unless the solar panels were on that building. You wouldn't be able to get the retail rate if they weren't on the building. Now, I've spoken with Jason, and he says that now we can put all of the panels in one big land area designated to each of those buildings and still maintain that rate. So that's something that is quite huge for us to, I guess, pay attention to or understand.
So,
Yeah.
just, when I say bifacial, so that would be something like a tent-looking kind of structure? Or is that
think
the
so.
panel on both sides?
I think both sides, so that it would get some surrounding.
I know
light from
Jason
the
said
back.
on the new ones now, they actually can collect from the back side. So if it's snow all over the ground like today, there's a lot of reflection, and it will gather that from the back side. I think that's the intention.
Okay, so, yeah.
I wasn't seeing it being a
Okay.
huge number by any means.
Yeah, I
but
don't
it
think
would
it's a
just
big percentage.
All right.
contribute to the net savings. So this, again, would have that 30-year guarantee and that 15-year warranty through NMAX as well. We'll get into the financing a little bit later at the end of my presentation here, and we'll deal with some more of the numbers then. But just for your consideration from NMAX, this was their proposal. It was to have a $3.3 million solar farm put into place to offset all of the municipal buildings in town. The price per watt was $2.06, and I went and figured out the price per watt on what we paid for the Civic Center and the ice rink, and it ended up being 1.81 when compared with their 2.06. And the reason for that is that it was very easy to just throw the panels on top of the Civic Center, throw a couple boards on them, and then they're ballasted in place and won't blow away. But if we do a solar farm in some farmland, they have to put in mounts, they have to do some more groundwork. There's a lot more that's involved with developing that. That being said, I found out the price per watt after the grant funding because we had that 5% increase in the rebate. And so post-funding, the solar farm is what I'm calling this big one. Its price per watt would be 1.46, and the Civic Center and the ice arena was 1.37. So we went from a difference of 25 cents a watt to 9 cents a watt. So it brought a lot closer to that with that rebate. What else was I going to say on this? You'll see, again, they've got the same financing that they had offered us similarly on the Civic Center and ice rink, and that was 3% over 15 years. They have had it set up so that, well, that payment of $17,000, that would be a lot more than what we would pay for electricity, and in fact, I'll get to that again on the financing portion at the end. I've got a slide that will cover that, but you'll see that the grant funding's included there. They have it listed as 25% on their slides, but I believe that that number of 978,000 is in fact the 30%. Would it be? Okay. I was looking at it and I couldn't completely get it figured. I thought I had it around 29, but again, that'd be something just to verify.
No, it's less than, that is really 25.
That is the 25%. We can get that figured out.
Maybe not.
Maybe I'll do that quick. Give me 2 seconds.
It's not 25 either.
Multiplied by
Because
3 is
25 would be a
2.9
quarter.
You look at 2.3 million.
Close to a
Somewhere
third.
between 25 and 30.
It's 25,
It's about 27.
So it's about
30% would be 1
29.7%.
million.
Okay.
So it's quite close to 30%. So that was my assumption. So that's just something to note if you're going through these again later, that 25%, that number is 30. He goes into further.
Question before you move on.
Yep.
So that upfront payment, then that's a grant to us?
Yes.
So they'll let us use the grant as the down payment
Okay.
instead of coming up with an additional down payment, yeah.
Oh, that's
Because
good.
the town provided, I think, 25% of the cost of the Civic Center and Ice Arena on top of the grant.
Yeah.
To make those payments equal out to a net zero. And that's where, again, on my financing schedule at the end, I'll explain that a little bit more,
Okay.
how that would work.
So if we did this, we'd be borrowing money from Max, basically, is that the idea?
If that's, this is something that have to go out to bid.
Yes.
But in this proposal, yes, that's what we did with these buildings too, is we borrowed from NMAX.
And that's because they could offer us a better rate than what another borrowing.
Does that go towards our
agency could.
debenture
Yes.
probably? And okay, it does.
Yep.
So throughout the rest of his presentation, he goes into just some simple statements about what the proposal would be, what solar does, why you'd want to use solar, the different things that have to happen before this proposal would take place. I'm kind of skimming through these fairly quickly. Again, they have your cost of electricity over your 25 years on average. Again, that is somewhat due to change just because prices change. And so your amount of return is subject to the changes in electricity.
Just mention the
Yeah.
size of it.
Oh yeah, we can go to that quick. Thank you. So, to put it into perspective, our two projects that we have currently, so the Civic Center and the Ice Arena, you've seen all the panels. Those are 547 panels over those two buildings. This project would be 4,100 panels. So it's around 2 acres of space. Or was it 8 acres of space?
Yeah, it was 80.
Okay, it could have been 8 acres of space, forgive me on that one. I didn't have that written down, but the size of it, when you see the amount of panels that we have, it would be about 8 times the size for the number of panels.
So do we have that land?
The West End.
Yeah, and that's something that has to be considered is, when, and this isn't in his numbers, but we talked about this. If, for example, we felt we could eventually sell 8 acres in the West Industrial at $40,000 an acre, there's an opportunity cost to factor into the cost of the project, because you're now not going to sell that land.
There could be potential tax
You know,
revenue.
so
different things.
there'd be ongoing tax revenue from tenants there, the sale price, a lot of that stuff. So
Utilities.
we'd have to look at, drill down on some of those opportunity costs as well, because just to forfeit 8 acres could potentially be forfeiting quite a bit of money long-term. However,
$20,000.
do we have a level of confidence that we're going to sell out 66 acres of industrial land in 30 years? Well, that's the other side of it. It may be the best use for 30 years. The other way to look at this is it doesn't necessarily, although there's some economy of scale, it doesn't have to be 8 acres altogether. So maybe there's 3 acres in one location that would work well, that isn't going to be used for anything else. Maybe there's 2 acres here and 3 acres there. So you could start to part it out. You have some incremental increased costs in inverters, because you're not using one large inverter, you're going to have multiple inverters, which add cost, but it's incremental. So we could look at parcels that may accommodate it a little better, or you look at putting up a whole field somewhere.
That question, Councillor Bengry.
Go ahead.
That triangle piece that we bought there a few years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
what was the size of that property?
Oh, boy.
What's that?
16 acres, wasn't it?
I want to say it was 6, but there's
That's what I was
3
thinking.
parcels, like 3 point something, 2, and just a little one. But again, you ask yourself, is highway frontage the right spot for it?
Yeah,
You got to have a little bit of that opportunity cost discussion.
yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I was thinking more or less out of sight, out of mind sort of thing.
Right.
It's the best way to go.
I look at pieces like and I'm not suggesting this is the best location, but you look at over by West Creek Drive. There's a whole area south of West Creek Drive that no one can build on because it's in a setback area. So there's not a lot of value to it. We can't sell it to anybody. So could you use it for?
That's in that slippage area.
Yeah, but you got a lot of flat.
Yes.
Prior to that, you could still keep it back a little bit. These things aren't adding weight to the hill really.
Right.
There's just things we could look at, some what you would call brownfield or lower value sites you could start to put it on, but we haven't gone down that road too much yet.
Yeah.
So now I'd just like to,
Of course, we just,
Yeah.
On slide 9, he says it's a turnkey operation for the town of Raymond. Does that mean they're paying
Yeah.
for it?
He obviously copied and pasted the PowerPoint
Yeah.
presentation.
I caught it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll let them know.
yeah. The numbers were for us, but yeah, some of the verbiage was for them.
So now we'll get to the fun part, which is the financing rates. So on this little schedule that I've done up for you, you'll see NMAX and Alberta for our two financing rates. NMAX has offered us a 3% APR financing, and we would be taking a 15-year term with them. They also offered us a 20-year term. However, it was a greater rate than what the province of Alberta could offer us, or what's that called, the Alberta?
Alberta Finance Capital Authority is a place we can borrow. Municipalities can borrow from the province.
And so that financing place from Alberta, their rate was quite a bit cheaper than NMAX's 20-year rate. NMAX's 20-year rate was 4%. And so I just threw the two options up here. Now, NMAX said that it could net zero us, but if you look halfway down the schedule, it says added cost to the town yearly. So for us to be able to pay them back, you may remember with the Civic Center and the ice arena how we paid a portion up front. And so for us to not pay a portion up front and to let the grant be the down payment, the costs do go up to have it equal net zero. So that's where that $40,000 a year comes into play. But when you look at the two side by side, on the bottom you'll see the total project cost, and it saves you nearly $300,000, well, I think $300,000 and change for your total project cost over those 20 years.
So when you look at the added cost of the town, that represents about $600,000 over 15 years, about that, a little bit more. And at the end, by spending that $600,000, you realize $300,000 saving, kind of.
Yeah.
It's a question of whether, and again, this is all hypothetical at this point, but if we go down the road of a project this size, are we willing to pay an additional $40,000 a year for the life of the term, the 15 years, above and beyond our electrical costs? If we go with the 20-year, I mean, $7,000 on $170,000 worth of electrical every year isn't too bad. It's incremental to add to the budget, right? It's okay. So that was one of the things we were just kicking around is term over the annual cost if we want to add any costs at all.
The only thing is, the panels have a return over 30 years. So, with the 15 years, how long do we recoup that 300,000 extra per year? Once it's spending?
Well, at the end of the day, they're only going to generate what they're going to generate, whether you pay for them in 15 or 20 years.
Right.
Right? They're going to generate the same amount over 20 years,
Same savings.
irrelevant of how we finance them. We just have an output warranty for 30 years. We expect them to live longer than that.
Yes.
Just they'll diminish in their output. But at that point in time, it really is kind of all bonus. You've long paid for them, the financing is paid for, and if they make it 38 years, 39 years, well, that's great. That's an upside.
Jeff, what are we allowed to debenture?
Oh, gosh.
You've got about 12 million available right now, if I recall.
Councillor Brown, please.
So at the end of 30 years, I mean, at the end of 15 or 17, we've paid for them. They're only going to last us 30 years. So then, at the end of 30 years, do we have to go ahead and spend the exact same amount of money to rebuild?
So with the 30 years, that's just what they've guaranteed it to
Right.
produce. So it could be 40, 50, 60. But then it would still have that diminishing return of 1%
Right.
less each year.
Exactly.
And they're
But
not
we still
gonna
have the
go down
wires
at once.
connected, right? We still have that infrastructure so that if all of a sudden all the solar panels just blew away in the wind, we'd still be connected to the grid. And so we could decide whether we'd want to get more solar panels or not. And after that first 15 years of paying back your loan, that's when they're kind of paying themselves
Yeah.
in excess. You make $150,000, give or take,
Right.
each year that you could put to something else. Councillor
Thank
Selk?
you.
Okay, if I remember correctly, we were looking to try and get the energy regulator
Yeah.
And if that were the case, then we'd be looking at possibly another form of electrical generation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could also distribute it through our system. So wouldn't it behoove us to see how far we get with the electrical regulator? I'm assuming, Jeff, we're looking at something like geothermal or something like that.
Natural gas has been one that
Natural
we've
gas.
suggested because it's relatively cheap.
That-
So let me
that would
speak
be-
to that for a minute with the renewable power center idea. One of the things I've been cautious about, I've been talking with Kevin Phillips and a little bit with others, is if we do this, I mean, we're talking $3 million worth of solar panels here. This is no small project. And if we can make progress with the regulator that allows us to begin to generate and distribute within our franchise area, would this frustrate that in any way? That was my concern. Right now, our answer is no, it wouldn't, because what would change, and actually if we did this project, right now the benefit to the town is simply we're being credited the retail price we're paying. That's our benefit, and that's the end of it. If we could get the regulation change that we've been proposing, the secondary benefit to the town would be everything we generate gets burned up within our distribution system, which means we bring less in from the outside distributor, and now our costs for that annually also go down. So we're spending, and we're going to talk about that later today, we're anticipating to spend $860,000 or something next year on distribution fees. Well, if all of a sudden those megawatts simply stay within the system and can be burned up and us getting credit for those, that could be maybe a savings of $100,000 a year on those distribution fees we're paying to those outside entities. Now the town actually has two revenue streams on this. Well, I shouldn't call them revenue streams, as reduction in expense streams. To expense reduction streams, which would compound our return. So I don't know if that was actually what you're asking, Councillor, but I don't feel it would frustrate what we're up to. And we can simply, this would kind of be generation phase one. And then next thing would be generation phase, whatever that looked like, natural gas, incineration of garbage, whatever that looks like. But I think this would complement that long-term goal of the Renewable Power Center if we can get that regulation change.
Go ahead, Mary.
On the same topic, at the last Mayor's and we had an executive from AGCO that came and spoke regarding the possibility of town generating power and being able to put it to the grid within their own municipalities. And I think there are changes that are being proposed. And he was talking about a think tank that is working together to create those possibility of generation to reduce the transmission costs. And I think if that is a direction that the big players are going towards, then I think there is hope for a project.
Just as an aside, local generation and being able to consume that, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so this is a bit anecdotal, but it does more per capita to support the greenhouse gas goals of the province than any other initiatives that have been put forward. We simply can't get the province to give us that regulatory change at this point. They've just, frankly, filibustered our efforts at this point because they're so bombarded at Alberta Energy with policy right now pre-election. So I don't blame them, I actually don't. They've got so much policy they want to enact pre-election that we simply can't get on the agenda there. But it's not for lack of trying, certainly.
Councillor Court?
That leads me to two issues I've been thinking about. Governments come and go. There's a very good chance we're going to see a different government in June.
Yeah.
Are we going to see a change in this kind of process? And number two, we've got other projects we've been discussing for the last year that are going to take a fair amount of capital as well.
Yeah.
Those are two of my concerns with this.
And that's why we wanted to present this to you. This may not be a capital priority for you, and that's understandable. My feeling is that the grant disappears post-election if it is a conservative government. Again, anecdotal only. That just seems to be the rhetoric, that this kind of thing goes away under a different government. So it may not, but there's a bit of a window here if we're looking to access the grant. You can always do the solar, but you're going to have 30% time to get it paid back. And it's a big project. It's a kind of a big, scary project.
Well, I understand your concerns, but I also think that if we're able to provide savings to ourselves in terms of energy costs for 15 years, we need to kind of weigh it very, very carefully. What is it that we want long-term? What is it that we want short-term? Considering there's a window of opportunity that is maybe 6 months.
I'll just throw one more thing out there. The past 10, whatever years, we spent a lot of money on infrastructure, a lot of money on pipelines underneath the pavement, everything else. We have not spent a ton of money on other things like recreation. You know, so I'm just wondering if we're getting a little imbalanced. This would be a great project. If we can afford both, it'd be great if we can afford them both. But maybe I'm living into here because I'll be dead in 20 years. This is what
You can't take any credit for it when it's paid off, right?
That's not my issue, but I'm just saying that maybe we need to look what's going on right now and for the citizens right now.
Alex and Jeff, could we offset our street lighting program with this?
That's included in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about 19,000 a year, isn't it?
We're a little low. Yeah, we're in the 30s.
Yeah.
Low 30s. Yeah.
Electricity is not going to get cheaper, guys.
So,
And we disagree with that if they take away the...
to summarize it, we will look at under the other business to summarize this amongst the council members. Thank you, Alex. Have you got any questions for us?
Just last comment of thank you.
Hilarious.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, hopefully that shed some light on the solar situation.
Oh, you were just waiting for that one, weren't you?
There's one out there.
Your theme song, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me.
Or There Comes the Sun.
That song is.
That's 2 minutes.
That's right.
Joe, can you get that projector?
Thanks again, Alex.
Yeah,
Appreciate your presentation.
We have to that switch.
Okay, adoption of minutes of October 2nd, 2018, and you'll want a chance to review those. Is there any changes or discussion on those minutes? Then I'll ask for motion. Mayor, for motion, all in favor? Carried. Okay, number 6, this is the big items for tonight. The policy R8R, remuneration for council. It's a review of the policy. It's come up in several meetings this past year. And I think we need to look at the backgrounder. So we have, in the bylaw and policy on policy R8R, or R84, I'm sorry. It says the recommendation to council is that the rates for compensation as per policy are not changed until a recommendation is forthcoming from a future review committee. Now, if you read that whole background information, it talks about when that review is to take place. And I don't know how you councilors feel about that. So let's have some discussion on that.
Well, if you want me to give you.
Go ahead, Mayor.
There are two things. One, I think there is wisdom in following the review schedule, but there is another item that to me is more pressing.
The FCM article.
And the issue has to do with the changes in the taxes that is coming, and it's going to be effective January 1st of 2019. That change in tax is going to affect all of us in a sense that the government is now taking away the benefit that was given to elected officials to have 1/3 of their revenue non-taxable. In other words, that amount of monies, depends whatever you want to call it, per diem, is going to add to your incomes that you have, and is going to force you in a different category and you're going to probably pay between 10 and 12% more taxes. So it will depend at which level of income you have, of course. But regardless, it seems to me that the 10-12% is about an average that's going to be there. And I was talking with Jill and with Jeff regarding that, because I think in all fairness, our per diem and our quarterlies bring us at the level of income for the position of elected official, where we are in a mid-average towards more the low rather than a high. And I think it would seem to me that the new changes would be affecting the revenue that we have. Sure, it's a position that is a volunteer position, but there's also time that is attached to what we do. And so I was looking at it and thinking, there is one portion of the amount of money that we receive that is pretty well fixed for all of us, which is the quarterly portion. And I think if we have to make changes, or if you want to make changes, and you don't have to, but if you want to make changes to offset the changes that legislation is going to bring, then I think about 10 or between 10 and 11% should be the increase on those quarterly. And that would kind of take care of the variation that's going to be caused by the non-taxable portion becoming taxable. So that's just a thought. So 2 points. 1, don't change the schedule. 2, address that issue because it's imminent.
Now remember, this money is added to your present income. So people that are retired are going to be hit a lot less than the individual that's in business or still having a wage. And so that's the implication of it. You've got to look at that. Some of us will be hit hard, some of us will be not so much. Go ahead, Jeff.
That's one of the difficulties with this policy is I can't say how it affects every one of you because I'm not privy to your financial situation, nor should I be. So when you look at on some averages, for those of you who will take in, remember we're talking about 1/3 of your total income. You're already taxed on 2/3, so 1/3, and it's the federal portion of the 1/3. So when you take some averages, if you apply 15% tax to 1/3, you're looking at about $600, again, not knowing any of your individual tax implications. So it kind of plays around that number.
I have a question. When we were at AUMA, you said that AUMA had found out how much other councils were making in Alberta, and that they put, sorry?
They have that grid.
Right. So I was just wondering, are most of the other municipalities going to jump on board with this? Will they make changes because of this tax?
Right. All I know is some of the stuff you read in the FCM article. I haven't heard much about it, to be honest, yet. I'm not hearing too much about it.
Because I didn't hear about it until I read this.
I just got this last week. I was having a bit of a look, but they give some examples.
Right.
But I haven't. It's not something that I'm hearing much about on the administrative level in the province at this point.
Now remember, this will affect your 19, not 18.
Right.
It will affect your 19.
Yeah.
But in that article, if you read it carefully, you could see that what they are realizing, that in large city where people have large amount of stipends or honoraria, the implication is high, but they have a fair cushion. In rural towns, small towns, that's where the impact is the most, because it affects it affects the amount of money you have to, again, try to leverage in order to pay for it. And they say most of them will have to do it through increase of taxes or through finding savings some other places.
Councillor?
So, Mayor, and you, help me to understand what you had indicated, that the per diems is something that we wouldn't be touching, but the amount would have to come off the quarterly? Is that what you're saying, that it'd be added to the quarterly?
But I'm saying that let's keep the policy and be true to the policy. Midterm is coming in the years. Within 6 months, we will have to have a committee to review the rates. But right away, what we need to discuss before the 1st of January is if this council feel that they need to take care of the non-refundable, the non-taxable portion that's going to affect your income, then that has to be done now by way of a motion, a resolution or something, policy or whatever. But it needs to be amended.
At this point in time, if you're in question, I suggest you talk to your accountant and read the different options in this FCM article. Because they have 4 different options: no action, expanded expense policies, and so forth. And I think it'd be best for you, if you're concerned about it, and if you want to make those kind of motions like the mayor suggested, we need to individually talk to your accountants and see if it is, worthy.
Well, essentially, I think what you have to do, you will never be able to, through any policy, to address individual problem, because all of us, we're so different. So essentially, this is why I thought, if you deal with the fixed portion that we all have and increase it by about
$30%?
$200.
So you're $900 a quarter, you're 36, well, for councillors, you're $3,600 a year is your quarterly.
So that would be...
So you'd be pushing 15% to compensate for $600, although again, I have no idea what your individual implications are.
Which is about 150 per quarter, right?
Yes.
150 per quarter.
Yeah.
So that would be about the increase that would have to be there to
$600.
take care of the extra tax.
Yeah.
Well, I know for myself, I work, and Paul's working, and Peter's still working, and you're subbing, but, I know for us, it would definitely affect us.
Well, this is
I know it
what I
does
was
every
thinking.
year.
I was thinking of you guys more than I was thinking of
And I
myself.
appreciate that.
And I was thinking, what could be a
But
solution?
you can't do it just for the 3 of us, it has to be overall.
But this is why I thought
Yeah,
the only portion where we equal is a quarterly.
yeah. That's right.
It can't be individual.
Councillor Court?
I'm just looking at comparisons here. Our mayor is vastly underpaid compared to the rest of the towns around
I'm not
here.
too worried about that.
I know you're not. Council,
We're talking down the road then.
we're vastly underpaid compared to the rest of most of the rest of us except for Pincher.
You look at Raymond, I mean, God.
But
And that's a joke, because Raymond's mayor, I know in 2015 made $38,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
in 6 months'
Picture Creek is
time,
high too.
in 6 months' time, that we'll need to strike a committee to review that. And so 6 months' time, I think is fair enough.
I'm certainly not doing this to make a ton of money.
No, neither am I.
I could do a lot of other things, make a lot more.
But what you're making, they're going to take away.
Well, maybe.
But I certainly don't want to make less.
But yeah, I think we need to look at it.
Why don't we consider essentially what's imminent and coming within a month? That's right. Would you be willing to look at that and come back with, no, if you have to do it in December, no later than,
Oh,
So-
I don't know.
But why don't you have a sense of around us, around the table, if that's something they would like to do? To begin with, let's try to figure it out.
We can take a straw vote.
Well, I think we need to look at what the mayor is suggesting, and I feel that
Quarterly.
the quarterly, yeah.
You could make a recommendation to council and vote on.
Councillor Selk?
Just, can I make a comment?
Yes.
Or two first. One, and Jeff and I talked about this some time ago, the table that shows the differences between the different communities. Our actual cost per capita is lower than that because our population's increased. So
Yes.
It's actually 300,900.
Yeah, right.
So it's actually
Right.
22 something
Yeah.
change, so that's something. The other aspect of this is that I understand what the intent of the previous council was, is that they wanted to, but in some respects, I also feel like that council is almost bettering this council. We shouldn't be bound by what they did.
We can,
You're not bound.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we look at this as a whole rather than piecemeal. We do this now, we do that in 6 months when we strike a committee. With all due respect, I'm pretty sure that if you're striking a committee with several different groups of citizens, they would suggest that we treat this like a church home and do it for nothing.
Yes.
Well,
Councillor Court, what do you think?
Well, I'm just, Councillor Selk just has a way of words, that's good.
A truthful way.
Just saying.
Councillor Brown?
I think I agree with what the mayor said, but I also agree with what Councillor Selk says. I think that we do have to relook at this. I don't want to be making less. I don't want to be having more taxes taking off what I'm taking home. I do love being a councillor, but I don't want to be bumped into another tax bracket because of, I don't want to be penalized for being a councillor, I guess.
yeah.
You're penalized the minute you put your name in.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to look at this this month, the end of this month, or early in
Councillor
December.
Selk, why don't you make that recommendation?
I mean,
I don't think we've agreed on anything. We talked around the situation, but do we want to do this in 2 stages, or do we want to do this in one foul swoop? That's what I'm suggesting. The mayor's suggesting we do this incrementally, and we do this now to take care of the implications we're going to face in January, and then let the committee do their thing in 6 months. I'm
Just one thing to consider, you actually wouldn't have to do it until March when we paid your quarterly,
Yes, that's right.
right?
Right.
You'd be
Right.
fine
Right.
up until,
But still,
We pay
it's
it quarterly.
something, we may as well,
no,
I mean,
I just don't know how far down the road we want to kick this.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm.
Yeah.
I agree.
you could have it as your December committee
Yeah.
discussion. You know, right now, we don't have anything on that agenda, it's still a ways out, but it could be,
Right.
Because we are going to have the committee meeting.
I
in
believe that was the
December.
plan, yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
cancel that one, yeah.
Councillor Selk. So we want to review at the CCW in December?
What is it that you want to review
Yeah.
exactly?
That's what I need to
That's
know.
what I want to
The
know.
policy. Do we want to develop a policy or reinstate it? Go through it?
Okay, if you look at the terms of reference of that policy, it says that it is an external committee that will look at that.
That was posted from another council, and we do not have to follow that. We can change that policy.
So, hang on there. So here is different ideas that you propose in there. Are you saying that we will rescind the whole policy as to how remuneration is done? And are you saying that council itself will decide what they want? Is that what you want to do?
No, but we can rescind that
Well, that's
policy and
just what you're
develop a
telling
new
me.
policy.
No, you're not getting it. What I'm trying to say is, in here, it says that it's an external committee that will review that in order not to give the perception to the public that we are going to sweeten our pockets. Because if that's what you want to do, I can tell you, next election, you have it coming for you.
Councillor Court?
For some reason, we seem to think Carson should always be the low end of everything.
Well, we're not the only one, trust me.
Well, we're
We're
not,
pretty
but I'm
close.
looking at towns comparable to Fort McLeod, for example, and all those. I'm not, I honestly, I don't know if I'll even running it, it's just not gonna make a huge difference for me one way or another. What I am concerned about, and so far in this town, we haven't had to worry about this, is so many communities and so many counties elect by acclamation. They can't get a good person to run, like, they've got other things on their plate, they're doing other things. If there's some kind of compensation that could encourage good people to run, I'm all for that. I don't want to see our town revert to an acclamation, get 6 councillors, because that's all that's signed up.
Well, to tell you the truth, acclamation is not the way to go.
I know that, that's what I'm saying, if we could,
It's
if
very
there's an
poor for
encouragement
democracy.
for good people to run, and maybe it's a little bit better compensation, I don't want to make people tick.
But should that be money?
What else would you suggest?
Just the love of your community
Well,
and
I
desire to
I
serve.
support you on that, but you may be a little more altruistic than most people, man.
Okay, I accept that.
Not wanting to be disagreeable with you, Mayor, I'm not finding where it must be reviewed by an external committee. That may have been the recommendation of the former committee, but I don't think it's a policy piece.
Right.
But
Is
I'd
it
have,
not written inside out?
I'm not seeing it, but I'm going very quickly through this, but I'm not seeing it.
Okay, well, I'll read it
So the
again.
discretion may be able to lie at your table, is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
well, I thought I read it, so I might be, I need to be corrected on that one.
I think it's in the background. Yes.
In the essence of time,
Good for you, Councillor.
why don't we at least kick this down the road 1 month and chew on it for another month? I mean, we're looking at this and we can see just by the numbers that the remuneration costs for
Okay.
mayor and council are in the bottom 1/3 of the communities that are surveyed here, or maybe even less than 1/3. So just, that's something to think about.
Okay.
That's all I'm suggesting, and that's just move it down the road to December. What do you think about it? You go talk to all your friends on councils and other communities, do whatever, and then come back to the table.
Okay, so,
Go ahead.
Councillor Bengry just gave me that, but it just said that policy R84 are not changed until a recommendation is forthcoming from a future review committee. But the review committee could be a committee of council.
And that was just the recommendation from the previous committee.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah, so it's a
So-
recommendation. Thank you. As to be corrected.
So can
Accept that.
somebody make a recommendation, please, Gerry? Or Councillor Selk?
Jeff or Jimmy, gonna wordsmith this, because I'm just gonna recommend we kick this down the road for a month.
Table it, table it.
So policy
for-
R84 will be on the agenda for the committee meeting of December?
Right.
Okay.
That's what you said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Please come back with your thoughts and decide, is there any more discussion on?
Can I just ask a question? It doesn't need to be part of the resolution. In fact, why don't you go ahead and vote on the resolution, the recommendation to council, sorry, and then I'll ask my question.
Any other proposals? Councillor Selk, for a fourth resolution, I need a motion. Or,
You just
That
got
was
the
my
motion.
Yeah, you've got it.
okay, all in favor?
Recommendation.
Okay, carried.
So my question is, you saw the communities we used as comparatives in the last assessment. I can go back to those. Simply, I pulled this from their financial statements, which are posted online, with the exception of Raymond for some reason, but that's a different story.
Yeah, we know
They
why.
have not posted their last 2 financial statements online. But do you want us to add some additional communities to that? Do you want, are any of those anomalies you don't like in the mix? Because I can just refresh those fairly quickly.
Just, Jeff, on, Mr. Chairman, if I...
Go ahead.
Picture beat, I'm not seeing the correlation there, because it's a population of 1,600.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
I don't see the
Okay.
correlation there. So maybe something that's more closer to,
Nanton?
sure,
Yeah.
whatever's
For example?
closer to our population.
And Drumheller is about the same size.
Yeah,
I try not to go too north because
Yeah.
things really change as you go north.
So
But yeah, I'll have a look at that.
essentially,
Carstairs.
the comparison should be per capita? Is that?
Well, we can look at
good?
both that per capita and that percentage of assessment comparison. That's what the previous group wanted to use to
Yes.
try and normalize everything a bit.
Right,
The other thing that Councillor Brown alluded to is AUMA did put out their compensation
Yeah.
survey, which included council compensation. You can appreciate there's a million variables within it, but I'll draw on that to see if we can kind of compare that apples to apples as best we can.
Councillor Court?
Again, I don't know how we do this. I would like to see the total compensation that these people are receiving, not just what their base is.
All I can go off
Again,
is
I'm
in the
looking at
financial
Raymond's, and I
statements.
know it's,
Very difficult because they're not the same kind of
It is
with that
difficult.
paid.
I'm just looking
They don't
at
divulge that
Raymond's, and I know
information.
what their base pay is, and I know
Yeah.
what they took home.
Yeah, and so
Big
how,
difference.
How their per diems.
well, the tricky thing there is that the auditor is supposed to capture, if we reimburse you for anything, that's captured in the audit piece. So I don't know how to drill down on that further, but I will try and do it the same.
Yeah, it's
Uniformly.
difficult, because I know some of their counselors, what the low-end counselor and the high-end counselor
Yeah.
3 years ago were, it was half.
Okay.
The low-end guy was at 18, the high-end counselor was $36,000.
Okay,
I'm not suggesting that we come anywhere close to that,
And he's
maybe not even the low-end one.
yeah, okay. We'll arm ourselves with all that information and be back within December.
Councillor Brown, you had a comment?
He answered it.
Okay.
Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Selk.
Maybe just for interest's sake, when you throw in Cardston County,
And the school board?
No, not the school board.
Okay. Right.
Yep, no problem.
Kind of
Okay,
interesting, kidding about
Let's
the
Holding
move
on to
on.
that for a while, haven't you? You've been holding on to that for a bit.
That's kidding about the school board.
let's move on to policy F20-4, fees and charges. I spoke to Jeff on this. There's a policy that F20-4 that the fees and charges are set, according to this policy. But if you look at our golf course and some of the other programs we have, it's more of the golf course than it is any of the policies. But it does include the skating rink and the swimming pool. It does not allow us, really, according to this policy, to deviate from that, from offering a better price. So, Jeff, you want to address that issue?
Yeah, I bring this up, we're about a year into adding golf to the fees and charges policy. I am not a fan of knowingly being in afoul of the policy. I think that's bad policy. If I intend to break it a number of times over the next year, which in this case I kind of do, and I say that with all due respect. What we have, for example, is the golf committee would like to do a promotion for youth memberships. We had very few youth memberships last year. They want to do something between now and Christmas, so I use this as an example. So when I'm hearing from the golf committee, I'm saying, okay, I love the idea, I fully support it, I want to see us do it, but again, I'm contrary to the policy when we offer that rate, because council set the youth membership rate by policy. So I have options. I can wait until November 13th, I can bring it, we can amend it, then the next meeting we can amend it back to when it was, when the promotion's over. But at the golf course this year, we did Toonie Tuesday, we did Swing Down South promotion. We probably technically violated the policy on hundreds of occasions on the golf rates, and I don't like that for policy. I think that's bad policy. And so what I'm asking for some feedback on, and I put in the backgrounder, is how do we, I think there's a good reason to have policy for rates. I do not want rates to be something that can be haggled every time somebody doesn't like one and they can just come to council or to the CAO and negotiate a different rate. I don't want that for 1 minute. That's just a royal pain. But what I do want to find out is how do we give some leniency for promotional initiatives, for marketing, for these types of things based on the recommendation of the committee with the golf course. I'm finding that having golf rates under a council governance policy is a bit problematic. And I'm looking for some feedback on that.
Jeff, I'd like to use you as an example.
Okay,
Jeff has got a son, Russ,
Ryan?
and there's an expedience in this policy that we need to deal with. We want to sell youth memberships. Now, let's take Jeff and his boy, and he says, I can get a year pass for Russ for $80 or whatever. And that'd be a great,
That's okay.
great,
I've called him Russ.
Ryan, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, call
A
him
great staffing stocking stuffer. Let's think about that, so we promote our golf course to the youth, who will, you know, be the big golfers in 2 or 3 years from now. And we need to do it in the time it's expedient that we do this. Yes?
I really believe there's a value in what has been presented in the background there. And I really think that if we are kept abreast of what's happening with the rate changes or whatever through your CAO report, I think council would be updated as to the changes. And I really feel comfortable that administration could look after the changes of rate to allow for promotion of our golf course, which is an entity that is in a town and should be brought to the best use we can make out of it. So I would be ready to make a recommendation that we remove the rates, the golf rates, out of that policy and allow administration to oversee the rates and the promotion of the golf course and
Okay.
fixing rates
Can-
for youth.
Can I make a suggestion on that? Why not the skating rink and especially swimming pool? We want to promote our pool, our lessons,
We've
the
already-
use of our pool and so forth. We've already done it. I don't know how, Councillor Selk, you're on the golf committee. How do you feel about it?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we do those things. It's not like we're not doing them,
Well,
like you said.
I can speak to that a little bit too, because I see it as a bit of a nuanced difference, but I'll come back to that.
Like the mayor's referred to, I like the idea of letting administration deal with it. I would suggest, if there's anything that's really wild or
Yeah.
crazy that, Jeff will bring into council.
Yeah.
The thing that I think we will find with the golf course in particular going forward is that I think there will be more and more opportunities to do different things, because I think there are other groups who want to use the golf course as a fundraising tool for their hospital board. They want to do some things with the
Yeah.
golf course. And I think it's great that if we can do something to help those organizations, this way we're allowing Jeff to take care of those things.
Yeah.
Councillor Brown, you had one?
No problem.
So Councillor Bengry, let me speak to Councillor Brown's comment about the pool and the rink. We don't get a lot of requests to vary the rate that often. What we do get, and this is why I say it's a nuanced difference, that there's some policy in place, is you mentioned like a youth party. They'll want to do that and they'll look for a reduction in the rate. I asked them to go through the donation process. And I have discretion to exercise donations up to a certain amount before I bring it to council. So I think Epic did a youth party where we gave them an hour free if they paid for an hour. Well, that was well under my discretion to offer that donation to them. And I had them fill out the form and request a donation and for what purpose, and then we offered them that amount free and they paid for an hour. So I've handled many of those through the donation piece, but we haven't really varied from the rate. From the set rate. So a youth group is still this much an hour. And we weren't trying to promote passes at a discount, for example. We weren't doing a promotion for 50% off passes if you buy them in 2018.
Right.
Like, we've never really gone down that road, and I haven't seen too much of that.
Councillor Brown?
But I think that's my point, is I still think it's a great idea to have it run through administration. So we don't have to be, as long as, like the mayor said, we're kept in the loop through your reports. I don't think we have to come to council
Okay.
every time there's we're all about promoting what we have, whether it's the pool, whether it's the golf course, whatever it is. We want business to Curdston, because when Curdston booms, we all boom.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
what I think.
So Mary, you ready to make that
Well,
recommendation?
I would like to hear a little bit more about the others. Do you want to change it? Everything, or just a golf course to the discretion of administration? That's really what the difference is here.
I think Jeff covered it good with the donation part of it. In those odd times when people want something, we've got some money put away, so we don't have to change all that policy. So I would support the golf course. The other ones, I think I'd leave with
Yeah, they're already.
Councillor Bars?
I was gonna say, we had a pretty in-depth study and research on the pools and the rinks and everything from all the other communities a couple of years ago. And we struck a pretty good balance there with our pricing. We came up a bit and matched some of the places like Sterling and Raymond and McGrath. And I thought that those were pretty good. I don't think we need to even look at them again for the time being. But I do agree on the golf course situation, that we need to take a look at that. If it means that we're going to get more youth involved, that's what we're all about.
Yeah.
They're our next generation of leaders, and we want them not to be discouraged. Think that we don't have nothing to offer them.
Councillor Drew?
Yeah, I think I agree.
Okay, Mary, you're on the list.
Well, the motion has been, the recommendation to council has been done, so I think we can vote on it.
Okay, can you read that back for us, Joe?
Moved by Mayor Kronen to recommend to council to remove the golf rates from policy F20-4 fees and charges and allow administration to oversee the rates to allow for the promotion of the golf course.
Okay, you've heard it.
There you
All in
go.
favor? Carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to mention, you're going to see fees and charges probably 2 or 3 times in the next few months. I've asked Shem to change it to a bylaw. It's more appropriate when the town has fees and charges that they're under a bylaw, not a policy. Policies are more meant to govern me and my people. And bylaws, and again, let's not think about recreation for a minute, but let's think about a connection fee. We're going to talk about that coming up. If someone chooses not to pay it, and we try and enforce it, it's much more robust under a bylaw than it is under a policy. So we're going to be doing some movement in that and taking that governance policy, making it a bylaw. You'll see that soon. So we'll have a lot of discussion about that.
Good. And Councillor Brown, you and I need to get together with our administration people.
Yeah, we need a policy review meeting, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on to C. Now, this is a very involved off-site thing, and it can be mind-boggling, but it can also be a cost situation, and how we determine our off-site levies. So Jeff, this is totally on your floor.
Yeah, just a couple of things. In the first sheet I sent you, council may recall we talked about this in August, and the number we had that time was about $11,800 an acre for a levy, and there was some concern about that laundry list of items we had. So we pulled that back and we went and said, okay, let's look at only a couple of historical construction projects. So we looked at 2nd Avenue, sewer and water, and we looked at the twinning of the sewer line down the Lee Creek going back up the west. And we said, okay, there's benefit to these undeveloped areas, although we could have some debate on the percentage of benefit, but we've kind of landed where we think that might be. And then we looked at future costs, but we really kept it to stormwater and a couple of things like the sanitary lift station improvements and a northeast sewer lift station. So for example, on northeast sewer, we can't service much more on that east side until we put a lift station over by the water fill station. So because just the slope and the gravity of everything is going to have to flow down by the bypass and then pump to the sewer plant, as an example. So we narrowed down the scope of all the projects, and we got to about $3.5 million worth of projects, culminating in about $5,000 per acre. We need to internally do a little more work on the percentage of benefit allocated. I'll admit that right up front. We need a more quantifiable formula to get to those percentages, in my opinion. And so I'm kicking some things around. Nolan's working on that a bit. What I wanted to ask for tonight is 2 things. One is that number getting a little more palatable? So at $5,000 an acre, you're looking at roughly in town 3 lots per acre. So you're looking at $1,300 a lot as an off-site levy. And 2, how formalized do we want to make this process before we invite public input? Because you're going to get a bunch of it, and rightfully so. You should get a bunch of it. You should entertain a bunch of people that are super mad about a levy, because they're going to give you a lot of reasons why it's not something that should proceed. But we want to have a close number first. We don't want to go in there with some half-hatched number, because then we're arguing about a hypothetical, but I think we're getting there. But we also need to plug in the public here at some point before we get too far down this road, because they need their chance to exert that political pressure on you. So those are the two things I wanted to get a little direction on tonight.
See, and where offsite levies come into play is how much development do we want? Can this deter development, your offsite levy? So, Mayor?
When you really look in answer to your questions, if you look at the schedule that is given to us regarding the other towns, a lot of them have chosen not to have levy for the good reason that they're trying to attract people and develop. And I especially did not want to have the small developer who had 3 or 4 lots only wanted to do that, to be extremely penalized through levies. On the other hand, you can see that a town like Lethbridge, who have no problem asking for over $100,000 an acre of levy, and that's a norm over there, which is a lot of money. So there is a question, how much can we bear of developing the town? There's still a lot of lots that can be developed in this town. And should the rest of the population or citizen be subsidizing the development of other lots? And is that in the benefit of the town to subsidize because we want growth or not? So that's really what we need to wrap our head around, I think.
Councillor Court?
I can see 2 issues with this. The first one, a town like Raymond or McGrath or whatever, they're growing because they're a bedroom community.
Yes.
They can say the offsite levy, they're going to collect it back pretty, I think they had 35 builds in Raymond this year. They'll collect it back in taxes like that. In Cardston, no levy or an offsite levy, it's not going to make a difference, I don't think. As far as plot growth, I don't think did we build 1 house this year, or did we build any?
I looked at the report last month, but
Not very many anyhow.
no, it's been quiet.
So I don't see it as hurting us either way, as far as development goes. The mayor did mention, however, I'm just wondering if a person comes in with a 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, whatever, development, should the citizens of Carson be subsidizing that developer? And the people that are buying those lots should be subsidizing those. Well, those are my 2 concepts on it anyhow.
Councillor Barnes?
I look at it from the real estate side. Realistically, right now, there's nothing being built. I get the questions asked all the time. What's the cost per lot? And I tell the price for a town lot. I tell the price private lots are. The price of private lots have dropped considerably because they're not selling. And when I tell people and these are people from out of town, I get calls, I say, "You gotta be kidding me! We pay twice that much where we live." Wow, but they're not coming here to build. They're not coming to buy. So I wonder. I'm kind of like Councillor Selk or Councillor Court. It's not going to benefit us, not going to hurt us either way at this point in time, But to put a $1,200 or $1,300 levy on an offsite levy on a property, is that going to really hurt the sale? I don't know. I don't think so. I remember when lots were selling for $17,000 and $18,000 here, and I remember I sold a lot up in the East Hill for 17, and Greg Burt at the time was the CAO, and he sent me a note telling me what the offsite levies were going to be for that property, and so it wasn't it wasn't a problem then, but now the lots have gone up 3 times since then. That $17,000 lot now is $40,000 and $55,000 for that lot. So, and off-site levies at that time were $5,500 to put in curb and gutter and water and sewer on that lot. And people paid it willingly. But when now the lots have gone up, and that's not through any fault of the town at all, that's just the market. So when the price of lots have tripled, and then we throw a $1,300 or $1,400 levy, off-site levy on it, and then somebody's going to say, holy mackerel, you've already tripled the size of the lots, and when that statement is made, they're blaming the town for it, and it's got nothing to do with the town, it's the market and the developers that have set that price for those lots. So I don't think an off-site levy of what we're talking about is going to hurt the sale at all.
Councillor Drew?
So can I just ask, when we're talking about off-site levy, when somebody buys a lot, they have to pay the town X amount of dollars. If a developer comes in and decides that he wants to develop that area, let those lots sit for 10 years, do we receive any money for that at all, or is it at the sale of the...
So it depends.
Okay, I'm just trying to...
Levies, many times, are actually issued at the time of subdivision. So there's a very distinct difference. There's off-site levies, and there's off-site costs. Councillor Barnes actually explained and described off-site costs. Take 7th Street West. We'll use that, for example, where Councillor Court lives. When that was just horses in there and pasture, the town went in and put in water, sewer, curb, gutter, sidewalk, road, and said to that property, when you develop, you're going to have to pay us per front foot for those costs that we've already incurred. And so that's what happened, is when they sold them, they had to factor in that the price was this much, plus the town negotiated with the landowner there that they could pay those when they sold. So that was a negotiation of paying off-site costs when they're sold. Levies are different because we're saying these are costs that are incurred not on your site. So let's use a real example. Let's use Mr. Mike Schaefer, who just bought 8 acres. We're telling Mike, we want to charge you for infrastructure that is not connected to your property. It's being built off-site. It's a stormwater pond down there. It's a pump station up there. It's improvements to the water plant over there. None of this is connected to your site. And so normally those then are charged at subdivision. So when he chooses to subdivide into the 12 or 14 or 15 lots, we would charge the off-site levy, and then he would factor that into the price he has to pay. Now, can everything be negotiated differently? Yep, sure it can. But I'm always a little, I guess it can work either way. The West Area Structure Plan is a really interesting case study in off-site levies because we haven't had a levy in its growth time. So we saw 3rd Avenue go in, we've seen a few more houses on 10th Street, we've seen Mike Schaefer he hasn't subdivided, but looking to do behind on the 8 acres. And so we haven't captured all that per acre on the West Area, and yet we've got to find $500,000 to build a stormwater pond because they're there. The only reason we need the stormwater pond is because all those homes are there. That's the reason it's required now. And so, to answer your question in a really roundabout way, it can always be negotiated. But off-site costs are a little different than a levy because they're not attached to the property.
This might be an inappropriate question, if it's just tell me and we'll move on. But the John Schaefer development up there, what happened with that as far as the town off-site levies and all that kind of stuff? Is that not permissible?
No, it's okay. I'm trying to think exactly what happened. There was actually a historic levy on the parcel when he bought that from Hollands, that he paid upon subdivision from Hollands. I can't remember what that was for, but that sounds right, doesn't it, Jill? But there was a small levy that was sitting on Holland's parcel that was registered by way of caveat that was paid when they subdivided off to sell to Mr. Schaefer. It wasn't one of these utility levies we're talking about. It was a separate one for something at the time that they subdivided initially. But there's not a levy bylaw in place, so he was not subject to any of the levies we're speaking of here.
Councillor Selk?
Seems to me like offsite levies are the only fair way of recuperating, or recouping rather, costs that the town has to incur for subdivisions or development or anything that's going on without us actually using MSI funding or the town fronting up the costs or doing whatever it is we need to do. And like you referred to, Jeff, the storm pond, we're gonna have to build it. We have to build it, so the fairest way to pay for it is to get some offsite levies so that all of the citizens are paying for the storm pond solely themselves.
Well, that's kind of the thought's been running through my mind. If we don't have the off-site levies, then we're gonna have to tax to get them paid.
Correct, have to raise taxes.
And then every citizen in this community will have to pay for it. And that might be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah,
No,
philosophically,
you
it
don't
would
pay
say, I didn't benefit financially from the sale of those lots.
Exactly.
And yet I'm paying
You're
for the
subsidizing.
infrastructure
It's
required for
a
lots.
subsidizing.
That's the very simple argument. It's
Yeah.
not considering everything, but it's a really base level, simple argument.
Great. But one other thought.
Yeah.
At some time in the past, those things were paid for somehow because we have a community full of houses. At some time in the past, those services that were given to everybody has had to be paid for.
You used to have a offsite levy
That's right.
Yes.
until, I want to say 2012 is the date I want to say. You had one until about 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And it was challenged politically by a number of people, and it was rescinded at the time.
But it was challenged because the formula that was used could not be properly
Yeah,
justified.
that was part of it.
And I think the people who own property over there had reason to challenge. They really did. We couldn't come up with a proper rationale as to why the cost was what it was. And it was something that needed to be rectified.
Councillor Selk?
Again, in the essence of time.
I like that.
Are you comfortable with these numbers, Jeff?
I want to work on the percentage benefit. I want to tweak that a bit, but I don't think it's going to change the overall numbers significantly.
Okay,
So I think it's a number, if we put it out there, we could start to have some debate about the appropriateness of that number.
so we can make a recommendation to administration to move forward with the offsite levies so that we can then enter into public.
Yeah, so we could bring you a draft for first reading, and then you could set a date for some kind of public hearing on offsite levies. The other thing I would probably do in that is I would actually send something out to all of the vacant landowners in town. Because really, for me, for Jeff Shaw, I can't subdivide my lot. Doesn't matter to me. Right? But it does matter to Doug Sheen. It does matter to Mike Schaefer. It does matter to guys that have land to subdivide.
Okay, so I would make that recommendation.
Okay. Recommendation, Jill, have you got it? Okay, you want to read that?
Moved by Councillor Selk to recommend to administration to move forward with the offset levy bylaw and bring the draft back to council.
Good. All in favor?
Okay,
Carried.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, distribution access tariffs, bylaw 1649, there's 3 parts that we have to consider.
I almost feel like apologizing for this one.
And this one is a big one because it's talking about the access fees charged by Fortis. And what's going to happen with those, it looks like we're going to have possibly a decrease in our fees. Who knows?
Don't hang on that.
No, we did not want to.
Okay, do you want me to
Yes,
try and
go
work
ahead.
this out? I want to take this in a couple of chunks, but it needs some explanation. And I've said this before, you are, as far as the AUC is considered, the board of directors for the electrical distribution company. And as such, you must approve rate changes of that company. You only have discretion over distribution and transmission charges. You do not have discretion over energy charges. So that's what we're focusing on here. We have been historically, and frankly, in my opinion, should continue to be price followers for distribution and transmission. We are not an entity that can command attention of the AUC in setting distribution and transmission prices. So we have historically tried to follow what the Fortis rates have been for distribution and transmission for a number of reasons. One is they are literally almost the only other player south of Red Deer, and they are our neighbor. So everybody right outside of us and around us is under Fortis rates. And so we've always kind of followed roughly that rate structure. At the end of the day, you have tremendous discretion over distribution and transmission rates, and you can choose to be anywhere compared to the market. That just comes with either a cost or excess revenue, or competitive forces or disgruntled residents. You have a monopoly on distribution and transmission, and the only way people can get out from under it is to move. So you have some control there. However, what we have to look at is Fortis has been approved a mid-year in 2018 increase, and they've been approved a substantial January 2019 increase. And that's passed on to us as the corporation. That has not flowed through to our residents. The buck stops at the town office. And now you must decide how much of that, what the impact of that looks like for your customers on the distribution and transmission. So, with that little preamble, and by the way, actually my information changed. Kevin Phillips and I have been working on this since I put the agenda out, and I've got some updated information, some better information for you tonight that I just got and haven't had a chance to give to you. But if we look at that first chart that says 2018 town, 2018, by the way, PPI stands for Phillips Partners Incorporated, so that's Kevin, the consultant. I had to ask him that too. I didn't know what he was driving out there, so I asked that yesterday. So what that means is in 2018, we budgeted to take in $1.164 million in billing distribution charges and to pay out $1.16 million. That's where Kevin thinks it's going to land, because the year's not over yet. So I said to Kevin, look, seeing what you're seeing in the market, where's that going to land? So we think we'll have a little bit of excess there. And same thing with transmission. We budgeted to take in $716. We think it's going to come out at $714. We're only talking a $2,000 spread here. So it's really small margins we're dealing with.
That's 714,000?
Correct, sorry, that's in thousands. So 1.164 million and 716,000 is what we budgeted. Now, one of the things that's changing on us is that's what we think we're going to take in. But what changed on us mid-year was how much we got to pay out. So when you go down to the uses, distribution access tariff, we budgeted that we would pay for us $751,000 in distribution transmission. Kevin thinks that's going to land somewhere around $764,000. Now, that, I don't want to say that's okay, but it's kind of okay. And let me explain. We address our distribution and transmission fees normally on an annual basis. Frankly, because it's just a lot to manage and figure if you do it a lot. Fortis does it quarterly. And so they got that middle of the year increase approved that we didn't adjust mid-year. The thought at the time when Kevin and I talked was, we know it's there, we know it's not going to impact us huge on the bottom line, we know we have some transmission reserves, and there's a reason we have those for these fluctuations, that's the point. We'll pay the difference out, we'll capture it in 2019. And we'll try and capture it. So now when you look at 2 columns over, I have 2019 town budget. And if I just go down to uses, we are budgeting $858,000 in what we think we'll pay for it, or what we're anticipating paying for it, but Kevin actually thinks that's going to fall in at about $831. So we're making up for what we lost in 2018. Okay, we're trying to recapture that. Now the reason why Kevin doesn't have forecasts in the sources is that's sitting at your table, at your discretion. Now I have a recommendation that I will make, because I actually don't expect that you folks are experts in setting distribution tariffs. I think you do a lot of things really well, but I don't anticipate that's at the tip of your tongue. So we've budgeted to collect $1.167 million in distribution, $779,000 in transmission, and then those other smaller ones down below. So that's, let's just hold on to that for 1 second. if you go over the page and scroll down, you get these really kind of donut graphs, which are incredibly difficult to read.
Yeah.
I'm not recommending much with this, I just want to suggest something here. If you look at the second batch with the many colors, residential, small commercial, medium commercial, street lighting, what that's breaking down is it's saying, how does the town of Carson structure the rate? So when Joe and Jane Citizen get their bill every year and those fixed fees are $70, how is that broken down? And so what this is showing you on residential, the first yellow part is the variable portion of distribution. The blue part is the fixed portion of distribution. Purple is variable transmission, green is fixed transmission. Then there's balancing pool and local access fee that make up that fixed charge. You actually have incredible discretion as to how you want to structure that. You could, and I am not suggesting this tonight, but just let me give you an example. If we could get a renewable power center proposal through the province, where we could do what we're looking to generate within the community, we could change the rate structure to make a huge percentage of your distribution variable. And then we can go out to the citizens and say, we can give you more benefit for investing in microgeneration on your home than any other community in the province. Because we can structure it as a variable rate, more than fixed. The problem is it flies in the face of the trend right now. Fortis is sitting back, and I don't mean to vilify them because they're a good company, but Fortis and TransAlta and the big players are sitting back and saying, this whole renewable thing really cramps our style because we get paid to move electricity. And the more people generate on their homes and close to the source, the less electricity we move. And that's how we get paid. So their structures are shifting more to fixed. That it doesn't matter how much you conserve in a month. If the wire to your house is this big, but you only need this much because you're conserving and you put in LEDs and you put on some microgen, you're just going to pay for this wire because that's what goes to your house.
So is this the complaint we get from people when they have a small electrical charge,
Correct.
but a bigger charge on them? Okay.
Correct.
Exactly right.
Now I'm
Because
understanding it.
we have
Yeah.
simply tried to flow along the same rate profile as the big distributors. And so it's continually skewing more fixed. And so you don't see the benefit of putting in a whole bunch of LED, converting the entire Civic Center to LED or the light or the ice rink. You see it on the energy piece, which is a small chunk, but you don't see it on distribution and transmission because the formula is skewed fixed. I am not suggesting we discuss changing customer this profile right now. I'm just not. It's an exercise that we simply don't have the time to tonight. But if the regulation changes where we can be an island in this electrical distribution world, we might want to start talking about those load profiles. Because we can start to say, look, Dennis Barnes is a citizen, if you go buy solar and put it on your home, we're going to keep that power within the town, and we're going to reduce what we bring in, and that saves us money. So we're going to skew your profile to variable, because you're doing a lot of good things to reduce your consumption. But right now, we don't get that benefit from any conservation efforts within the town. I mean, we do a little bit because we're bringing in less, but our revenue is also tied to moving electricity. Let's be frank. The town revenue is tied to the exact same thing. And to make us wait on variable and Fortis is weighing on fixed, we just lose margin, is all we do, right? So there may be a time to look at these profiles, but my recommendation is it's not today. So then let's just go down to that next little table down below where it says bill comparisons. Now this has changed a bit, and in fact, I know it's a bit unconventional, but I want to use the whiteboard because I have better numbers for you on that bill comparison, which is going to affect your recommendation to me tonight. Sorry, camera, you won't see this. So what you see on there is if you take just distribution and transmission, and you take a current town, a residential is paying about $57.05. Typical user is paying $57.05 a month on D&T, excuse me. That's about 83% of what Fortis is charging, so we're lower. But I'm going to qualify this greatly. Because Fortis's customer load, or I don't want to call them load profiles, usage profiles, and ours are a little different, when you factor in the electricity costs, we're actually not that big of a spread. So I wanted to write down a number here that'll show you what I'm meaning. Residential, great. Well, it's not great, but it's going to work. Actually, let me take a step back. I am going to propose to you, Kevin and I are going to propose to you, that you consider a 6% increase in your distribution access tariff rate. So that's what we're proposing. And one of the reasons is to compensate for the increase Fortis got mid-year last year, which we reflected there, and it's also to capture the increase they're getting in January 2019, which is relatively considerable. So this will still put us under the Fortis by a little bit when you consider the cost of electricity. So if you were to go with a 6%, well, 6.1% on residential, that will put a typical Cardston customer within 92.1% of a typical Fortis customer, residential customer. If we do a 6.4% small, what was that category called? Small commercial. So small commercial with a 6.4% increase puts a typical in-town user within at 93% of a typical small commercial Fortis user. So we're still just a bit under. And then on the medium commercial at 6.6%, that puts them at 98.7%. So sorry, that was 6.6. And I know these look like really, really specific numbers, but it's how they fall back out after you factor the amount of revenue you're trying to collect. And every one of their user profiles, the breakdown's a little different. So I know you saw this 80-some%. That wasn't considering cost of electricity. So I asked Kevin, I said, I need you to look at electricity costs because our profile is a little different than Fortis, and then give me a comparison. So
That's a proper comparison.
that's, in my opinion, a more proper comparison because we all use electricity. We all have a... Now, the other caveat is this is a typical user. There are anomalies in all usage, but I can't consider every single anomaly in every category. It's just too much. So residential at 6.1%, 92, small commercial 93 at 6.4, medium commercial 98 at 6.6.
Okay. I just, Jeff, for my own information, the two increases that Fortis have been allowed
Yep.
come to what kind of percentage? At 6% midterm?
That's, I think I had it here. So the January 2019, I don't know if he has, it just says rates effective April 1st, 2018 will be in place till December 31st. I don't have that one there, actually.
Do
Sorry,
we
I don't.
know what it was mid-2018?
I'd have to
No.
email Kevin and ask. Yeah, I just know, well,
I know they were substantial, I just wondered if it was more than 10% or something.
well, I'll
like
give you, what I can do is, so we anticipated 751,000 and it came in at 764. So
Okay.
just if I took that number, it's gonna come in at, that's actually only about 2% higher than what we anticipated. So it would lead me to believe it was somewhere in that ballpark.
that. Okay, so they're increasing by 2%,
That was last year.
okay, and this year they're having a substantial increase. We know that it's a substantial one. I don't know what substantial means, if it's 4% or 5% or something like that. So they're increasing by about, we could say, 6 or 7%.
Yeah, I need to get that exact number, so that's a bit of an assumption.
So bottom line, when the citizens get on us for 6% increase, we blame it on Fortis?
Or you're just passing the cost.
You have no obligation
I'm just saying that
to buffer that, but it only,
Makes
we're
sense.
operating an electrical distribution system for a reason, and that reason is that it's a financial benefit to the community.
if we don't raise it, then we're subsidizing it
Then we're
through
eating that
taxes.
margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't earn anything.
Right,
We don't
right.
earn
You're just reducing your margin out of that
Yeah.
system, which already has,
We got a
frankly.
tax to fix the system when
Yeah,
the
that's
time
right.
comes.
That's right.
So you know, you pay it now or you pay it later.
It's darn,
Right.
darn if you don't.
So one thing that your rate structure has done historically, and will continue to do, your rate structure is funding the operations of the electrical system. It is paying for the capital improvements. We have not debentured for the capital improvements. And it is benefiting the ratepayer by bringing some revenue just back into general rate base. So it
And offering
is,
them lower rates.
it is offsetting and coming in as general revenue. So that's the proposal Kevin brought to me today on a more comparative with energy usage.
So we're generating about 228, somewhere around there, thousand.
Oh, on the general tax benefit?
Yes.
That has varied a lot. If you go back 2 years ago, it was about 40 grand was all. And then in another year, it'll be 250. It can be subject to some weird anomalies.
600,000.
Yeah, it can be subject to some, like we had an $85,000 swing and balancing pool in 1 year,
Exactly.
right, for example.
Councillor Lawrence?
So, just a hypothetical.
Yeah,
If we were to debenture all these repairs,
Yeah.
what interest rate are we paying?
well, again, you saw today 3.5% or so is what you pay on a 20-year.
Yeah,
10 years probably pushing about 3.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But again, we have no debenture in that department. which is
exactly.
great.
So it's better to
They want to keep that.
pay as you go than it is to debenture it out and have to pay
Yeah.
down the road all that extra interest, which
And we are
is probably a
still,
lot more than what the customers would be
and
paying.
we are still lower than what the average.
We're still
customers
up,
pay.
exactly,
Correct.
we're still lower, so that's, to me, makes more sense.
Councillor Court, you might be the one that recalls this. The initial offer from Fortis, when the council turned that down, we were actually quite a bit lower than the Fortis average user at that time. And the discussion was, why?
That's right.
Why are we substantially less than basically industry? And the discussion at the time was, we're going to try and have some parity because that's what's going to fund the capital improvement. Because we were in an inferior position from a capital improvement point of view then. We did not have a very upgraded system.
Now we do.
And we're about 2 years away from being fully converted to 25 kV and having that whole conversion done, which can bring down our capital cost investment at that point. Knock on wood. But, so anyway, all that being said, I need to bring to council a schedule for distribution tariff. Now, we also have a fee part we're going to talk about here in a minute. But from a purely distribution transmission rate, this is our proposal, is 6%, 6.1, 6.4, 6.6, depending on the rate, a class, to draw that kind of parity with Fortis.
Can I ask one more question? The fixed rate, that seems to be everybody's bugaboo.
Yeah,
The Fortis has to go through the province, through the AUP.
correct. Always approved by the AUC.
And you know something, they never turned down, interestingly enough.
So, not to get into a whole bunch of maybe conspiracy theory here, but Fortis Alberta has a guaranteed rate of return from the province of Alberta.
Yes.
And so if they can show that their margins have been jeopardized by costs, inflationary pressures, those kind of things, essentially they get an increase because they have a guaranteed rate of return on any capital they spend to invest in the
So
system.
you blame Fortis and the province.
And you can blame AltaLink and you can blame TransAlta. There's a number of
It's out
those
of
big
our-
players that they
So a
get.
lot of it is out of our control.
Now,
Correct.
it's
Hands anyway.
over.
The previous councils have taken the position of flowing through the increases.
In the
For the sake of
interest of
time. Everybody knows.
Yeah,
And the fact that all of our eyes are bleeding after watching all this stuff on our screen for the last 45 minutes, what do we need to do to move this along?
Actually, if there, in this one, if there's no objection to this proposal, I'll simply bring it back as a draft bylaw next meeting.
Next
Yeah,
meeting to do.
yeah.
Okay, so I don't need anything to do.
I don't, now, I still need your attention.
Yes.
The other part of the tariff, if you scroll down, you'll see an email from Kevin Phillips which talks about fees. There's one page that all it has is the old historic connection fees on the top of it. One thing that I would like to do as well, speaking of fees and charges, is we currently have electrical connection fees in the utility bylaw. I want to move those to the distribution bylaw, and there's a number of regulatory reasons we should do that, so that'll be coming to you soon as well. But Leonard and Kevin are proposing actually quite a reduction in connection fees. They are proposing And I wonder, where did that get to now? I'm missing it. Uh-oh, hold on here.
It's Schedule C of your bylaw, 1649.
I didn't think I had amended it just yet. Sorry, I thought I had all this organized better. One second. Okay, yeah. So in Schedule C, it's the very last document you have on the last page. Some of the previous council, you'll remember that we were looking at doing an investment program into the electrical system that was to offset connection fees that was going to mimic Fortis's investment program. That was something we were looking at, and it was a little more problematic for us on a number of levels because it was based on perceived peak demand over so many years, and it got a little complex. So what Kevin and Leonard are proposing is, Leonard went and took a look at the actual costs of these connections. Before we were kind of rate following Fortis on connection fees, but then they would offer this investment discount to certain, depending on the criteria. So Leonard is proposing we bring down that connection fee considerably to reflect the cost of making the connection. And as not an incentive so much, but to bring down that cost for new connections to not be onerous on business looking to connect. Previous council, remember, you had a delegation requesting a reduction in their connection fee because they wanted us to match the Fortis connection fee. So this fee would more match what Fortis's fee is after the investment program, without having to go through all this calculate your peak demand and bill you over a number of years to get the money back type of idea. And Leonard feels that their costs are still captured in this just fine. And so I'm actually quite comfortable seeing how this goes, and if it is a more competitive connection fee versus industry outside of our franchise area. Because we saw a specific example of 2 quotes coming saying, you guys are way out of whack on your connection fee, and I can go to Pincher or Cardston. Doesn't matter to me. And so we ended up getting them here, thankfully, and they're 3-phase, they're a huge power consumer, we get to build them all kinds of great distribution money every month, and so that was a good thing. You know, although you remember my recommendation wasn't to waive it, we went down, we did it, all good. So Leonard's proposing that, and then they are proposing a change to a number of those small fees that we charge retailers to administer retailing electricity in the town, and those were in Kevin's email up above. The previous council had a discussion on this, and I remember Councillor Barnes actually on this specifically, that, and it's all good by the way, there was discussion about increasing reconnect and disconnect charges. And you'll see Kevin's put that same proposal back on the table here. I'm telling you I'm not 100% comfortable with it, and let me explain why. You want to recapture your costs for doing reconnects and disconnects. I'm not debating that, you do. We don't need to be subsidizing someone who isn't paying their bill and needs us to go disconnect them. Here's the problem as I have it is, if you look at delivery of a cutoff warning notice, then the disconnect, then the reconnect, you're looking at $210 for that process. The reason why they're probably being disconnected is they're in arrears on their bill. And there was a discussion 2 years ago, if I recall, and again, I just remember you making this point, Councillor Barnes, was why are we piling on someone who obviously is in financial difficulty in the first place?
Well, we had a delegation come to council and request that we...
Some waiver of those?
Yeah, if you remember right, Dennis.
So this is back on the table. I just want a little feedback, particularly on the de-energize and the re-energizes, that here's the ambiguity in this. These are charges we charge the retailer. We have no idea what their retailers charge them. So herein lies the issue. We might debate about whether we should charge $49 or $70, and the retailer charges them $100 anyway. That's the problem. We have 15 different electrical retailers that can operate in Cardston. I do not know what their fee schedule looks like for that kind of thing. I simply don't know. So we could if we charge a lesser amount, we're just adding margin to that retailer. Or if they may just simply be passing along. Kevin's suspicion is that the retailer is simply passing along whatever our charge is. That's what he feels, that their charges are simply based on a cost plus of ours. So if we move ours substantially, the rest follows suit. Now, most of these, I don't have a problem with moving. They're things that are actually literally just between us and the retailer. They're things that don't impact doing off-cycle meter readings and different things like that. That's between us and the retailer and don't normally flow through to the end user. It's those de-energize and re-energize that I worry that they do.
Go ahead, Mary.
Jeff, would it be a lot of work to try to send an email to those different retailers?
I
and
don't
try
think they'll
to
disclose it.
ask
Well,
them?
they may.
Is that worth trying? So even if we had 2 or 3 of them
Right.
responding,
Right.
give us a sense, because then we know that about the rest would charge about the same amount.
So I do know NMAX's. That's the only one I know because we have customer service, a contract with them. So they flow it through.
What
So
we charge.
that's what
what-
NMAX does. Theirs is a
Okay.
flow through. So if we go from 35 to 70, NMAX is now 70.
Okay, all right. Could we maybe even do 2 or 3 others to give us a sense?
I
what's
can
going
try
on?
some, yeah, I can try some.
Just to get an
Yeah.
idea. Once we have that idea, if they all flow through, then it's up to us to decide if that's too high. But if they have their own prices, let's make sure that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot either.
Yeah, exactly.
Mayor, didn't our CAO administration do that for the past council?
I don't think we looked at these
No, we
fees
didn't look
and
at
what the
these.
retailers do. I think you
No.
just looked and said, we're not comfortable with a 100% increase on that, particularly on de-energize and re-energize.
But I would be curious to know if they're willing to let us know. After all, we should know.
Okay, so Jeff, you're going to bring some figures back for us.
Just quick straw poll then. Am I okay to amend the bylaw to reflect this? Is
Yeah.
everyone fairly comfortable with that? Are we okay to reflect the bylaw on the connection fees,
Yeah.
like the new property connection fees, 3-phase, 1-phase, okay? And I'll do a little more work on these, what we call retailer fees, and bring that back. But we'll draft a bylaw with everything else right now to get it to the retailers, and then we'll tweak the other stuff as we go along. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, it's 5 to 7, do we need a break?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
No
can I have a motion?
I move to, go ahead, Gary.
I'll make a motion that we recess for 15 minutes.
Okay, and...
Jill's got some food she made
And we
back
have
here, so.
some food here, so all in favor?
Yeah, Shem, what- when's he made you do?
he just goes...